Welcome back to Seasons, a devotional here on YouTube that's based on my book by the same name. And today I'm just going to be reading from the book, but I don't feel led to add anything to it, except at the very end I'm going to share a link to you to a music video that I think will really minister to your heart, especially after you hear what I have to say. Our God longs for us. Some believe that the God of the Old Testament is distant, cold, judgmental, and cruel. They prefer the God of the New Testament, the wooing, tender-hearted God who stands with his arms wide open to welcome anyone and everyone home, no questions asked. In my childhood, I carried that same view of God as I listened to epic Bible stories of Adam and Eve, Noah, and the great Exodus. Even after I entered into a deeper relationship and understanding of God, I found it difficult to reconcile the God of the Old Testament with the God of the New Testament, who sent his Son to die in our place. I'm sure that if I had sat down and really thought about it, I would have realized that the core premise of my thesis was a bit flawed. After all, I had been taught from an early age that God was unchangeable, and he was perfect in all his ways. If that was true, then logic dictated that he did not undergo a massive character makeover between the last verse of Malachi and the first verse of Matthew. His passionate desire to reconcile with his people was as strong as the day that he had to banish Adam and Eve, as it was on the day that he watched his Son in another garden, agonizing in the Garden of Gethsemane. For I am the Lord, I change not. Malachi 3 verse 6. God dismantled my beliefs by leading me through the books of Genesis, Exodus, and Deuteronomy, all in 1 week. I set aside my usual Bible and picked up a modern language translation in its stead. I read those books in the same way I would read any other epic story. Whenever I began to read that portion through the lens of past Bible studies, I felt God nudge me. Read on. Remember, this is my story. I want you to reserve any judgments or preconceived ideas until you finish Deuteronomy. And so, with that in mind, I read the familiar accounts of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac, Rebekah, Joseph, and everyone else. And of course, all the squabbly children of Israel who wandered around in the desert. And all those stories took on a much deeper meaning for me. I actually had to set the Bible down several times to compose myself as I read. I was overwhelmed by God's all-consuming desire to be in a relationship with his creation, and it broke my heart as I saw those he loved most betray him. And yet God kept on loving. Deuteronomy 7 verse 7. It was not because you were more in number than any other people that God set his love on you and chose you, for you were the fewest of all peoples, but it's because the Lord loves you and is keeping the oath that he swore to your fathers, that the Lord has brought you out with a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He kept on hoping and he kept on forgiving. Exodus 34 verse 6 and 7. The Lord, merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. I was astounded at the blatant sin and rebellion of his creation, and I was stunned by the haughty disdain that met his gracious overtures of reconciliation. He passionately longed for his people. His holy jealousy demanded that their hearts be as fully committed to his heart as his heart was committed to theirs. The God of the Old Testament was anything but cold and distant. He was present and active in their daily lives. He was passionate and relentless in his pursuit of their affection. His only desire was to restore his creation back to himself. His heart broke as his children turned their hearts away from him. He grieved and mourned as they allowed themselves to be enticed away into the unfulfilling servitude to false gods. Those gods demanded complete allegiance and gave nothing in return. People often say that they admire Jesus, but they don't like the God of the Old Testament that much. However, Jesus thought quite highly of his Heavenly Father and spoke of him with great affection and trust. Jesus went as far to say on several occasions that he only did what his Father showed him. All the loving, tender, forgiving, and life-transforming acts that Jesus performed on the earth were by the sole request of the God of the Old Testament. Every word that Jesus spoke against prejudice and oppression was dictated to him by the God of the Old Testament. This same God longs to come to you as Emmanuel, God with you. He paid the ransom for your sin and debt. He did everything he possibly could. He set you up so you could stumble into his loving embrace. Your desire to be in a relationship with him, no matter how passionate that might be, is only a flicker of a tiny ember in comparison to his burning desire to have an intimate, passionate, holy communion with you. I'm going to end this by inviting you to click on the I if you're watching this on your laptop, iPad, or smart device. And I'll put the link in the description below as well to a song that's called Pieces, written by Amanda Cook and Steffany Gretzinger. I know I'm slaughtering her last name, but it's one of the best songs I have ever heard that dismantles the false belief that God is cold and distant and that he is somehow bipolar in the way that he looks at us from the Old Testament and from the New. I just want to read the bridge. Your love's not fractured, it's not a troubled mind, it isn't anxious, it's not the restless kind. Your love's not passive, it's never disengaged, it's always present. It hangs on every word we say. Love keeps its promises, it keeps its word, it honors what's sacred, 'cause its vows are good. Your love's not broken, it's not insecure. Your love's not selfish, your love is pure.